Okay, hello everyone. I'm Sayan Banerjee, and today I will be talking about what I call an engendering of the human-wildlife conflict and its implications to conservation. So you have seen the logo of this conference earlier in this screen. So the background forms two elephants and some humans. So that and in a kind of TA state. So that is the place where I work. So this is some same kind of place where elephants come out of the forest and they love to stay in the humans' places, and people live day in and day out with the elephants. So with gender, we just a minute. Yeah. So this is our expectation from conservation, but we face a different kind of reality that everyone overlaps into each other's territory. So in terms of gender, we found that from a long history of scholarship that living close to wildlife has a different implications for men and women in terms of impact as well as response to this living. We also found that impacts are often asymmetrical towards and detrimental towards women due to gender hierarchies from patriarchal attitudes and structures that is going on for centuries that creates a kind of an asymmetrical impact towards women. And we have excluded these kinds of gendered experiences and participation in making policies and practices, which have we have found that these kinds of policies have become socially unjust as well as ecologically ineffective. Mostly protected area-based conservation measures forms into this category. We have also found that gender can be used as a kind of thinking conservation differently from this paper. So why engendering conservation and why is it necessary now? So the gendered aspects of impacts, responses, and also about thinking and doing conservation differently has remained understudied, even though we know that men and women have different kinds of notions as well as responses. So present wildlife conservation talks about two aspects mainly, either acting on the interactions part or secondly to establish some kind of resource governance regimes. Broadly, it talks about dealing with a particular crisis of conflict and coexistence. But what are the takeaways for gender from it? Of having, framing and dealing with all these kinds of crisis narrative, conflict, coexistence. What we can achieve from integrating gender into this aspect? So the present scholarship around gender is mostly quantitative, and as we have seen from other presentations as well, that it hovers around the attitude and behavior nexus, that what kind of attitude and behavior shown by men and women. But we don't really go into deep depth that why is it happening, of why a particular man or woman in a particular context think about that. It cannot be only education, cannot be only age, but what kind of histories of growing up as a man and woman can be there to produce these kinds of perceptions. So what we can achieve from integrating gender is to understand how conservation can be done with effectiveness as well as kind of in a just manner. So I used a framework called feminist political ecology. Just a minute. Feminist political ecology, which talks about that how gendered power asymmetry can be can talk to access to space, resources, labor, encounters, and experiences to form such certain kinds of living. I can talk about this framework if necessary. So some hard data about what is happening. So in the particular district, just a minute. Okay, so I've missed the study site part. Okay, the study site is located at India, in the northeastern part of India. If you are conversant with Indian map, so this is a northeastern part where which the part holds around 10,000 Asian elephants, and the particular district where this study is located has observed around 200 to 300 elephants each year. So elephants are migratory species, so we cannot ascertain that this number of elephants will be there. And from my work I have done this work in two phases. One from 2017, which I did a short-term work, which mostly based on interviews. Right now, for my PhD, I have done kind of a long-term ethnographic of 2 years of field work, staying in the village and looking into things, of participant observation as well as group interviews to see what is happening. Coming to some hard facts is that we can see that in the last 10 years, almost 176 people have died, more than 5,000 houses have been damaged, and 75 elephants killed, 2,400 hectares of crop areas were damaged. It's a single district, and if I put this into perspective, it is probably maybe size of Oxfordshire maybe. So this is one district, and we are having 5,000 house damage in last 10 years, and the pattern of damages are mostly repetitive. So each year it increases around the cropping season. Lots of crop damages, it dies down. So each year we are having these kinds of patterns. So but we found that with a great depth of ethnographic work is that risks and vulnerabilities are not uniformly situated within the community. So what we found that depending upon the kind of division of labor as well as usage of space within the community in terms of men and women, we are finding that there are different kinds of risks and different kinds of vulnerabilities involved. So in our cases, the community is mostly agriculture, paddy farming community, as well as there are tea estates where mostly women work. So men were found to be associated with certain activities and they accessed certain spaces, and women were found to be doing certain other activities and certain other spaces. So these kinds of division in labor as well as access were mediated through gendered roles and responsibilities. What society expects men and women to do. So I will take the farming as an example. So in farming, land preparation as well as crop protection is a man's responsibility. But women are more involved during sowing, harvesting and all those seasons. So, but in tea estates, the tea plucking is absolutely women's activity. So, and elephants visit both these places, tea estates as well as farming landscapes. So, men face elephants differently than women. Men face more elephants during the night time when they protect the crops, and elephants mostly destroy crops in the night. But elephants also move through tea estates in the morning when women work, or when women go to collect water or other fodder, etc. from the water sources or forest areas, fuel for example. They have more chance of encounters with elephants. So depending upon gendered use, roles and responsibilities, the overlap between spaces between elephants as well as humans are made. So this risk and vulnerability creates different kinds of impact and response for men and women. The direct impacts are of obviously death, injury and other damages, and deaths are more for men because they are socially expected to drive out elephants from farm fields because of concept of protecting the family. So when they do that, most men get killed. But on the other hand, the indirect impacts, for example, overburden of work or expenditure or decreased nutrition or mobility, all these things, they sum up on women on the long term, and they remain weak when we mostly our interventions work on direct impacts, but these indirect impacts are often left unacknowledged, uncompensated and not looked after. So there are coping, short-term coping is about confronting the elephants, which are kind of understood as a masculine task, only men can do. But in these cases, when women do certain kinds of confrontation, it is not being taken into account as a living, as a kind of a way of living with elephants. There is emotional coping as well in an individual and collective sense. It's also gendered. For example, alcoholism of living with no sleep day after day. It creates a kind of alcoholism with men, not much with women, because of socially expected environment that women are not supposed to drink that much. So men can cope with drinking and driving out elephants, but women cannot move away from that emotional burden even through drinking. Men have their friends gathered and drink and relieve the frustration. Women cannot do that. In terms of long-term adaptation, but we found that livelihood was getting restructured. People are living agriculture and they are going for more non-farm based labor and cash crops. And also men are out migrating from the villages to towns. But men can go out and they don't have to face the elephants in their village, women stay back because it's a norm that women do not go for long-term migration in this place. So they have to carry out those daily activities of collecting water, fuel wood, or any other kind of activities in presence of elephants. So all these differences in gender is conceptualized through a masculine atmosphere. That being a man, I have to be protective of my family. So to whatever coping or adaptation, I need to take decisions. So I will out migrate or change the livelihood, etc., etc. And this is normalized through concept of the gendered roles and what men and women ought to do. So the overall adaptation strategy in terms of living safely with elephants is mostly male-centered. That what is happening is changing male status quo, not women's status quo as such. But in this whole scenario, people are also developing certain kinds of perception about elephants. It's through anthropomorphization, and this is a kind of their own doing science by practice, not by degree, basically. So they know what an elephant is, what an elephant does, and how to live with elephants and different kinds of elephants. So there is also a gendered part that when women often talk about elephants through poverty, that like us, I am being poor and I have to go different places to collect water and stuff to feed my family. Elephants also do the same thing. Often men talk about their own out-migration to towns and cities, and they project it on the elephant. That elephants are like us, the long migrants. They are also going to the places where they will find more income or more food. So these kinds of anthropomorphization are also different. So we have certain kinds of knowledges, perceptions, and attitude towards elephants based on how they have lived with elephants for since time and how they have accessed certain species of elephants. We don't know how these knowledges of different kinds of situated knowledges can provide impetus or barriers to our conservation interventions. So there could be some potential for improvement of these conservation measures, but we have to test in future. So what is happening in my field side in terms of conservation practice is that there are two agencies who are actually working to manage the conflict. So one is the forest department and the other is the local or the regional NGOs. So forest department, what they do is basically they are the managers of the whole forested area, so they are also perceived as elephants owners. So we don't have a kind of community ownership over elephant, no, that is absent. So elephants are perceived as government's property. So the forest department, they restrict collection of firewood from the forest. They try to compensate damage to the community for the damages, which always takes 3 years, 4 years. They also do some afforestation, patrolling, elephant drive activities. They also provide certain kinds of crackers, torchlight to the people, and they do some kinds of outreach activities out of, compulsion. The NGOs, they mostly support the forest department activities as well as they do their own work. They mostly now are working on setting up community-based solar fences. Community-based solar fences are fences which the material is given by the NGO and managed by the communities. They provide technical help on how to manage those fences. They provide torchlight, crackers, etc., outreach activities, alternate and additional livelihood. What I have found in this, that all these kinds of things are all techno fixes. You bring a technology, put it into here, and expect that all things will be good. But we often often forget that how space and time management by the people and the elephants have, put a limit into these technologies. So there are lots of papers available that how, with time these things stop working. So these are all band-aids kind of interventions and not exactly long-term solutions. Gendered experiences are never a concern for any agencies to start working as a agent there, but their approaches and effects are gendered because all the public meetings will be attended by men. Because women, if you put a kind of a notice for public meeting, it is the men who will go out and attend those meetings. Female are, until unless it is female directed meeting or female only meeting, they do not go out. What happens is, all the hard mitigation measures, setting up a fence, setting up something else, or giving firecrackers or torches are attended by men. But on the other hand, whenever this livelihood thing come up, it's always directed towards women. That is, the agencies expect that women are only a beneficiary of livelihood, nothing else. So these kinds of things are always, even though you're not concerning gender, but things gets gendered. So all these approaches improve men's space-time use. You put a fence, men don't have to guard the crops, but it necessarily do not change women's working patterns. So, but what I found that the improvement in basic amenities, for example, putting up a kind of LPG provisional LPG gases to the household, or putting up a solar street light, the work time balance, providing housing, toilet, etc., created kind of a positive impact on the women's space-time use. That if I have a better toilet or a better source of water and fuel near my house, I don't have to go out to the places where chance encounter can happen. So, as a kind of an summary, what we need to do is basically first, as gender norms, work and perceptions create a kind of a particular way of living, so we need to treat gendering as a socio-ecological process, that being a man and women in an area where you have to live with wild elephants, so there is a particular way masculinity and femininity emerge, and that is how that will also go into ways of living. Second is, as an external expert, we are going and doing the research, we need to take their lived experiences as a crux and work on those experiences to see what kind of place-based interventions can be done. Third is that, so there are gender knowledge formation on what an animal is, what can animal do, and how to live with a particular animal. So these kinds of knowledges, even though if it seems unscientific and all, you need to take them into account, because that's the way of living in that world. So those are have to be taken into our own psyche. So this is where I stop. I can talk about the elephants as well, elephants space and time management, but that's for, I think, next conference. So I want to thank my community members at the field site who have let me explore their lives, as well as the elephants. My field consultants, the Forest Division, my PhD institute and supervisor and DAC members. I want to thank Rafford, INLAX and IDEAWILD for funding, and I also thank IUCN for holding this conference. If anybody wants to know more about this work, you can visit this. This is open access. Thank you.